Dad. If it stays like this, Mom's going to.
Beside me, lying on the cold floor, my son Sean, only 4 years old, cried out in fear. I wanted so badly to reassure him, to sit up and say, "It's okay," but the intense pain in my abdomen, worse than anything I'd ever felt, left me drenched in cold sweat, unable to move. Just this morning. No, just 3 minutes ago. It had been a perfectly normal day. Even though it was Sunday, I had gotten up at dawn, leaving my still sleeping husband and son to start laundry, take out the trash, and make breakfast. I had just finished vacuuming and was about to wake them when a sudden, unexplained pain hit my stomach. The next thing I knew, I had collapsed on the floor, and Sean was standing beside me, his face full of panic. He quickly ran to the bathroom, tears streaming down his face, while I lay there helplessly. I could hear the faint hum of an electric razor. My husband, blissfully unaware of the chaos, was calmly shaving. Despite Sean's desperate cries, he didn't stop. Instead, he just laughed and said,
"Mom's just tired. She's sleeping."
I wanted to get up, march over there, and slap that oblivious, freshly shaven face of his, but I couldn't. It was one thing for him not to check on me. I could accept that. But to ignore our son's distress and laugh it off? That, I couldn't understand. I'd always sensed a difference in how we felt about Sean, and now I knew I hadn't been wrong. Even as I endured the pain, a strange calm settled over me. If I disappeared, would he even regret what he'd done? But no, I couldn't leave my beloved son alone in this world.
"Well, I'm off to golf. It's an important client, you know. Sean, be good and listen to Mom."
He tossed out his hollow words and walked out the door. Left behind, my son returned to me, looking devastated. Summoning the last of my strength, I managed to say, "Mom will be okay. But I think Dad's in for a bit of a surprise." I'm Ariana, an ordinary woman in my 30s, balancing a full-time job while raising our son with my husband. Our son, Sean, turned 4 6 months ago, and we decided it was time to enroll him in daycare, seeing that he was able to manage basic things on his own. I worried endlessly at first, whether he'd adjust to the group environment, if he'd eat his meals properly, and if he'd cry without us there. At night, as I stroked his head while he slept beside me, I'd murmur, "I wonder if it was too soon to send him to daycare." My husband would just laugh and say,
"Sean's already 4. He's a big boy now. He'll be fine."
I wished he'd show a bit more concern for his own child, but to my surprise, Sean adapted to daycare without much fuss. He'd come home every day, eyes sparkling, eager to tell me who he played with and what they did. Seeing him so happy reassured me that my worries had been a bit excessive. Once Sean started daycare, I went back to work, and his growth seemed faster than ever. It made me happy, but I felt a little lonely too, watching him become more independent. When I returned to work, it happened to be the company's busy season. I barely had time for greetings before I was thrown back into tasks, trying to close the gap after years away. I'd always been confident in my stamina, but after childbirth and parenting, I quickly realized how much it had worn me down. My legs would swell the day after visits to clients, and I was often too exhausted for lunch with colleagues. After work, I'd pick up Sean, swing by the grocery store, prepare dinner, and often collapse on the sofa, unable to stay awake until my husband got home. One time, he shook my shoulder and said,
Hey, is it okay to leave Sean by himself?
Jolted awake, I saw Sean happily playing on the floor, toys scattered everywhere. When my husband saw that dinner wasn't ready, he got annoyed.
I should have gone for drinks with my juniors instead. I'll just eat on my own tonight,
he said, heading back out. I didn't expect him to cook, but I thought he could at least ask Sean to tidy up, put him in the bath, or bring in the laundry. When I was a stay-at-home mom, I handled all the housework, but things are different now. I work full-time with weekends off. I made it clear when I returned to work that we'd need to share the household responsibilities. I even asked him to help, but he just insisted.
I'm too busy with work.
He went further, saying,
Doing housework is a waste of my time.
He'd tell me.
Look, I don't mind coming straight home after work and doing chores. But what about the trust I've built with my boss by spending time with him? You can handle the chores, but only I can manage my boss. Besides, I'm sure Sean has more fun with you.
No matter how I tried to reason with him, he wouldn't budge. If I didn't stop him, my husband would go out drinking nearly every night and play golf from early morning on weekends. I wished he could direct even a bit of that energy toward our family. Sean would rub his sleepy eyes, saying,
I'll stay up until Daddy comes home.
Seeing him like that made me feel unbearably guilty. Daddy will probably be late again tonight, I'd tell him, but he'd insist on waiting. I didn't want to crush his innocent hope of even a short conversation with his dad. Ambition and dedication to work are admirable qualities, but if it meant making our child feel neglected, I'd rather he stay in a lower position forever. As differences in our views on family and work grew, so did the tension between us. Without Sean, we often barely saw or spoke to each other. Children can sense their parents' emotions, so I'd try to smile when talking to my husband in front of Sean, but my husband's attitude shifted depending on his mood. Since we rarely had a proper time to talk, I ended up doing most of the housework myself. Sometimes, I'd have Sean help, but as work got busier, my rest became scarcer, and I was often getting by in less than perfect health. One day, on a weekend, I was bustling around as usual, handling laundry, trash, and breakfast preparations before my husband and Sean even woke up. It had become such a routine that my body moved automatically, and I no longer felt irritated hearing my husband snore loudly. I decided to hold off vacuuming until Sean was awake so he could sleep in a bit longer. Just then, a sharp pain struck my abdomen, making me break into a cold sweat. Dizzy, I collapsed, bracing myself on my hands and knees.
Mommy.
I must have made a loud noise when I fell, as Sean was suddenly standing there in his pajamas, eyes brimming with tears, sensing that something was wrong. I tried to reassure him, but the pain was too intense to move. Then, I heard footsteps coming down the hallway and thought my husband was finally coming to help. But the footsteps didn't stop in the living room. Instead, they headed to the bathroom.
Daddy. Mommy's in trouble.
Sean cried, rushing to open the door and follow him. I could hear their voices clearly from the open doorway. Sean, almost panicked, was trying to explain that I had collapsed in the living room. But my husband just chuckled, saying,
It's fine. Mommy probably just wants to rest, so don't be too loud.
And then, unbelievably, he turned on his electric razor, drowning out Sean's voice. Sean, now even more distressed, ran back to me. I didn't want to worry him further, so I tried to sit up, but as I did, I felt something rise up from within me, and I coughed up blood. Sean, seeing this, panicked further and dashed back to the bathroom.
Daddy. Please. Help Mommy.
He begged, his voice full of desperation. I felt guilty for frightening my precious child like this, but I couldn't move. My husband, meanwhile, ignored Sean, dismissing him with,
"Don't be dramatic."
and kept laughing. Then, he headed toward the front door.
"Daddy has an important golf game with someone from work today,"
he said, putting on his shoes.
"I won't be back until late, so listen to Mommy and be a good boy, okay?"
And without even looking at me, he walked out. The callousness of leaving without even checking on me, while our son was sobbing, filled me with indescribable anger. I wanted to run out barefoot and destroy his golf clubs and car, but the stabbing pain in my stomach only intensified as my fury grew. Holding back tears, I asked Sean to get my smartphone, and I managed to call an ambulance on my own. In the fading view before me, I saw the paramedics gently speaking to Sean, calming him down, which allowed me to let out a sigh of relief. That's when I lost consciousness. In the evening, I heard the car engine and saw the garage light up. It seemed my husband had returned from an after-work outing. Without noticing me, he walked into the house, likely asking Sean in a carefree tone,
"Where's Mommy?"
Before long, Sean pulled back the curtain behind me and pointed to where I was standing in the garden. I don't know what Sean had told him, but my husband came running outside with a panicked expression.
"What are you doing out here like this? It's creepy."
Is it strange for a housewife to be doing some gardening?
"Well, Sean just told me you'd finished burying something."
Apparently, Sean had answered my husband's question with that single phrase. Upon hearing it, my husband had turned pale, thinking I was buried in the yard, and rushed out. It seemed even Sean had some feelings about all this. I understood well his reluctance to speak with a father who had ignored his pleas for help and left him alone.
"But it's weird to be out gardening this late. Do you know what the neighbors might think? Just come inside already."
Realizing I was fine, my husband's face shifted to a visibly irritated expression. He cared more about his reputation with the neighbors than my well-being. "I called you so many times. Why didn't you answer?" I asked as I followed him inside.
"I couldn't pick up during a business event." "Are you stupid? Stop acting like you're the victim here. My phone kept ringing the whole time I was with my boss. It was a hassle to explain. Anyway, you're perfectly fine now, aren't you? If you have the energy to be out here with a shovel, stop complaining."
Apparently, he'd seen my multiple missed calls and ignored them. He was right. The hospital had diagnosed me with a stomach ulcer, prescribed me some medicine, and I was able to come home. But the cause was undoubtedly stress, and it was clear my husband's constant outings and lack of regard for our family were to blame. Not that he cared.
"Anyway, what were you doing out here with a shovel?"
He asked, still in a foul mood, so I kindly explained. I was burying memories I once cherished. I burned every photo with you in it and buried the ashes in the garden. I'm preparing to leave this house, so I don't need that baggage. I'm going to divorce you. Got it? I'd already explained this to Sean earlier. I knew it might hurt him, but I thought it would be worse for him to stay with a father who didn't care about him. Though looking sad, Sean had said,
It's okay, Mommy. Just the two of us will be fine.
Which gave me the strength to begin preparing to leave.
Divorce? Fine, do whatever you want. I'm sick of dealing with a nagging wife and a noisy brat.
He yelled, right under the same roof as our 4-year-old son. No child is unaffected by such harsh words from a parent, yet he thoughtlessly hurled insults in the heat of the moment. Seeing him like this, whatever love I had for him vanished entirely. After that, we exchanged no more words. I called Sean to help pack, but instead, he ran over to his father.
Mommy was scared at the hospital. Why didn't you come? Mommy was in pain. It's not fair to her.
It must have taken courage for him to confront his father like that, but Sean stood firm, looking straight at him. Yet, even as our son asked him why he hadn't come, my husband showed no remorse. Instead, he averted his eyes with an annoyed look.
Then go stay with her forever. Just stay out of my life.
I wanted to lash out at this awful man, but I wasn't sure what he might do if I provoked him. So, I took Sean's hand, led him to our bedroom, and held him tightly. My heart brimmed with frustration, but I held it back, trying to stay calm for Sean's sake. Then, I quickly packed up what we needed into a bag. The rest of our belongings could be picked up or sent to us later. Sean, looking a bit more lively, began gathering his precious toys. The living room was silent, likely because my husband had retreated to his room. As I went to grab our insurance cards and first aid kit, I noticed him coming downstairs at the same moment, looking unusually flustered and avoiding my gaze. He kept apologizing over the phone.
I'm so sorry. I never intended for it to be that way.
He repeated his apologies until the call abruptly ended. With bloodshot eyes, he glared at me.
This is all your fault. What are you going to do about it?
While I was at the hospital, the nurse who attended to me kindly asked if I wanted her to notify my husband. I gave her his name and workplace, and although she looked thoughtful for a moment, I didn't think much of it. Apparently, that nurse's father was my husband's client tonight. When the nurse had left home that morning, she saw my husband's business card lying on their dining table and, due to her profession, remembered both his name and face. After contacting my husband, she noticed I was repeatedly calling him, and furious at his unresponsiveness, she notified her father. The client, enraged, told my husband over the phone.
A man who neglects his family isn't someone worth trusting.
This man was an important client for my husband's company, and with that call, their business deal, and my husband's expected promotion, was ruined.
Because of you, my whole plan is ruined. The company's loss will be in the millions. You're responsible for all this, so pay it back.
Ignoring his incoherent rant, I simply replied, "Isn't it a fact that you neglected your family? Nothing wrong in what happened, then." I warned him that I would call the police if he tried anything, and then Sean and I quickly left the house. Even as the door closed, My husband continued shouting, but neither Sean nor I paid him any attention. We went directly to my parents' home. I briefly explained what had happened, and they, sensing the urgency, immediately welcomed us. Sean, already fond of his grandparents, quickly relaxed and, exhausted, fell asleep. The next morning, I called my workplace and requested urgent leave. During this time off, I visited a lawyer, prepared paperwork, and started the divorce process. My lawyer, a compassionate woman, guided me through everything smoothly, sparing me extra stress. My husband's blunder had damaged his company's long-standing relationship with their client, and it seemed the company was headed for a major deficit. The client, distrustful of the company itself for promoting someone like my husband, expressed his displeasure. My husband's company president, furious, responded by demoting and cutting my husband's pay. Desperate, he eventually left the company, only to face a wave of gossip that followed him. My lawyer occasionally updates me, and it seems the company may sue him for damages, but he's apparently trying to resist, claiming he's no longer employed there. As for Sean and me, we're cutting all contact with my husband by changing our phone numbers, and I plan to transfer Sean to a new kindergarten to be safe. Knowing how he's only deferential to others but cowardly in his personal life, I doubt he'd have the courage to confront us directly. Meanwhile, he'll have to work multiple jobs to pay child support and alimony. Until I find an apartment, we're staying at my parents' house, where I can finally relax. My parents adore Sean and even bicker over who gets to play with him. He's made friends at his new school and enjoys going every day. On weekends, I take him to events and outings, or we bake together as a family, filling our days with joy. Thank you for watching this story. Please don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.